given us a lot to work with tonight. Now, I need to lead into this. Those of you that might remember the Dean Martin Celebrity Roast, this is what Father Scott's asked us to do. Now, I know I'm the Catholic school principal and I need to be a good example for everyone, but he's asked me to insult him for the next 30 minutes, so that's my job, listening to Father. I don't need anyone to call the superintendent, our Catholic school principal was making fun of the priest. I don't need that. This is going to be a fun night. Try not to go too far here. Raise your hand if you were at Father John's 50th Jubilee celebration. Beautiful celebration. Beautiful. Father Scott was tasked with the challenge to be give the homily at that Mass. A wonderful gift to him to preach in front of 20 priests and his bishop. He was very excited about it. And the premise of his homily was to speak about Father John is to speak of the person of Christ. Father Scott, you deserve that, but you are not getting that tonight. There's a lot of ways to celebrate the end of your tenure at a Catholic parish. Many priests, such as Father John, are holding a nice prayer ceremony, a nice dinner, cake after Mass. One of Father Scott's good friends, Father Michael Field, is tomorrow going to be doing a Eucharistic procession, followed by a prayer service and a lunch. Father Scott, hey, let's have a Mexican taco bar and insults for 30 minutes, so couldn't be a better way for this guy to go out, though, so. All right. So, I was going to introduce the invited guests. Father Scott didn't invite anyone. You are all of his friends. Thank you for being here tonight. So you learn a lot about someone when you work with them, when they're your priest, when you listen to them for 3 years in a row. And I think we learn more about Father Scott than you would most people because he shares so much about himself. And I think maybe part of that's why people like him so much, or people like him in spite of that, one or the other. One of the most interesting things to me is he shared a lot with us about things he's afraid of. I'd like today to go through Father Scott's top 10 fears. A lot of priests think a lot about what's my last homily going to be like. Father Scott's last homily with the children at school was about how he's afraid of the dark. Of course, he's afraid of the dark because his brothers mocked him with masks during a scary storm outside a window, like many of his other homilies. And he had this great opportunity to end saying, because of Jesus, we don't need to be afraid of the dark. He didn't do that. In fact, he never even told us he wasn't afraid of the dark anymore. So, top 10, number 10 fear of Father Scott, the dark. So, he showed up at the rectory with an F-150, which put our senior pastor, who drives a Buick, in a little bit of shock, I think. The truck doesn't even fit in the garage, as many of you know. And so, fear number 9 of Father Scott, getting his truck scratched. Which happened at the YMCA when he totally tore into someone, so. He needed like 2 panels replaced. He told me it was superficial damage. Interestingly, most priests wear a black dress shoe, a black casual shoe. Father Scott wears big Nike basketball shoes. Doesn't matter where he is, that's what he's got on. Fear number 8, bishop instituting a priest dress shoe code. What? You got ordained in those? Those are 3 years old? Quality shoe, all right. Fear number 7, this is a cheap shot, running out of tacos. Father Scott's favorite food, preaches about it, awesome, running out of tacos. Father Scott has had the uncanny ability to work in movies into many, many homilies. We've heard references to just about any American classic. We've even heard that he has sat Father John down and forced him to watch movies important to understanding American culture. All 3 Godfathers Father John had to watch. Which brings us to Father Scott's fear number 6, Marlon Brando. Raise your hand if you've tried to email or leave a voicemail for Father Scott. Anyone ever tried to do that before? If you might agree with me that that's a very challenging thing to do. I mean, you can do it, but that doesn't mean you're going to hear back from him. I think Father Scott's, one of his greatest fears is email and voicemail. In fact, he's gone so far as to nickname the red light on his office phone, which indicates there's a voicemail there, as the Red Devil. Fear number 5, voicemail and email. All right, lots of us have seen Father Scott out in the community, running. Not sure what he's running from. We've heard a lot of homilies about running. He's given the Notre Dame cross-country homily 3 times here, and he does a really good job making fun of himself and how bad of a runner he is. And he's so bad, in fact, he often talks about hating it and being bad at it. Fear number 5, running. Now I'm going to take this a step further. This may offend someone in the room. It will, I'm sure. Father Scott, if you ask him, if you hate running so much, why do you do it, Father? Father Scott will launch into this long rampage about the health conditions in his family. There's many people in his family that are elderly in age and due to poor lifestyle choices have diabetes. Fear number 3 of Father Scott, type 2 diabetes. I know I offended someone, but it's true. That's really why he runs. He says he's running from diabetes. Fear number 2, running out of flaming hot Cheetos. It's one of those challenges as a priest. You tell everyone, I really like this. Now you get it from everyone. So this fear will not be realized anytime soon. And last, not least, and I think most obvious, Father Scott's greatest fear is his brothers. How many homilies have we heard about his bigger, stronger, better-looking brothers and the ways they've insulted him and manipulated him in the past? So Father Scott's biggest fear, his brothers. Well, I'm going to introduce our next speaker here. David Yigiayan is going to come up and tell us a little bit about Father Scott.
Thank you, Drew. So clearly, given Drew and Katie and myself, I'm representing the gray hair here. So, Father Scott, I think, felt it important that at least one of us was a little older and mature. So I've broken his roast up into a few different themes. The first theme is Father Scott firsts. So let's think back, and he alluded to this a little bit in his homily today, and Ernest, thank you. The first time we all saw Father Scott at Mass. I think all of you were thinking the same thing I was, which is, who is this kid? And then, after his homily, the thought was, it is going to be a really, really long 2 years. And I was wrong. We were all wrong, because it was a long 3 years. So. Another first, his first baptism. Now, we could go to any baptism because he clearly has never approved in 3 years on how to do a baptism. But the first one specifically, he had no clue what he was doing. He clearly had never seen Father John do one or anybody else. The good news is he admitted to not knowing what he was doing. But do you all remember, and I don't remember if this one was the first one, but let's get this kid baptized. Now, it was really good sitting there watching it. I'm not sure how good the parents felt. But, the last verse that comes to mind is, I've heard that Father Scott actually has a good singing voice. So the first of this is, oh wait, we've never actually heard him sing in Mass, so we don't know that first yet. I want to move into discussions with Father Scott. Now, all of us probably at some point have had some dialogue, a one-on-one, some meeting with him. So I want to walk through a few of those. The first time was after a couple of these baptisms when he clearly wasn't approving. I proactively gave him some feedback. And I said, Father Scott, here's a couple tips for you. Breathe. Go a little bit slower. Appreciate the reverence of Mass. And he had no idea what I was talking about because clearly he has no idea what breathe and be going slow is. And again, after 3 years, we haven't seen that improve either, so it's still very quick. Another time, we're looking for a place to meet outside of the church, and where does Father Scott choose to go? A cigar bar. Now, I'm all for a good cigar, don't get me wrong. Thought it was a little odd place, And thankfully, he did not wear his collar when we went in there, so it was okay. But I think we've all come to expect the unexpected out of Father Scott. And my favorite discussion with him was, and it's interesting because Drew is just doing this, so I'm going to pick on Drew a little bit here too. I'm sitting down with Father Scott, and he's looking now for my feedback, as I'm sure he's done with many of you. I can imagine the discussions he and Father John have had, and he walks in with a phone, no pen, no paper, no nothing. And my first thought is, well, this is going to be an interesting discussion because what are you going to write on? How are you going to listen? This is going to be a waste of time. So during our discussion, lo and behold, he actually picks up his phone and starts typing. And I'm pretty livid about that because I'm assuming he's now texting a friend. And so I say, I can't believe you're literally not listening to me and you're texting somebody else. And he's like, I'm actually taking notes. This is good stuff. Which again represents me being old and him taking, because if you notice, Drew actually did not have pieces of paper up here. He had notes off his phone too. Speaking of communication, and Drew mentioned this one, and I think this one is a good one. If you've ever emailed Father Scott, I won't ask for a show of hands if you've gotten a reply, because I know the answer is you haven't, because there is no reply when you actually email it. I did once get one. I sent him an email, 2 weeks went by, and I never heard from him. And so I actually emailed Father John, and I said, hey, this kid has not sent me an email back. And I think Father John must have gotten up, walked down the hallway, because within 30 minutes, Father Scott sent me a very nice email apologizing. I think that's the last email I ever got from him. And then about a year ago, I was with Drew somewhere, and Drew's on his phone texting, and he's like, oh, I'm texting Father Scott. I'm like, seriously? He actually responds to something? And finally, after 2 years that Father Scott was here, I finally got his cell number. And if you did know this, he really is pretty good at text. Would be a good thing to know ahead of time. So, last little bit of a story is, about 2 years ago, somebody asked me how Father Scott was doing. Very dangerous question. And I said, he's got a long way to go. He's still young, a little immature, needs a little time. And about 6 months ago, somebody else asked me how he was doing, and I said, he's come a long way. His homilies have improved. I actually kind of enjoy him now. He tells good stories, he asks good questions. I said, but he's still got that sense of humor that really rubs some people the wrong way. So, while this is a roast, I'm actually not going to listen to Father Scott, and I need to end with a few positives from a serious standpoint. And I've got 4 key items here down to talk about Father Scott. He loves stories. I think we all know that. It's the base. Can any of you think of a homily that he has never started without a story? He loves stories, it's how he learns, and he does a great job of it. And again, as Drew mentioned, it is interesting because if you notice, he always paints out his twin brother to be almost evil, and Father Scott is just the nicest kid in the world. And I really wonder if we pulled his parents aside what the truth is on it. He's actually very, very good at learning. He has a strong desire to improve. Now, he takes notes the wrong way, as he does them on his phone. But one of the things that I admire very much about Father Scott, I think this really is a rare trait in somebody who is still young, is he knows himself very, very well and sticks to who he is. Never in his 3 years has he tried to be Father John or anybody else. And trust me, I know a lot of us have asked him to be Father John. He sticks to who he is, and it's something I admire a great deal about you. Even with that sense of humor, he sticks with that as well. So, appreciate that. Third item is, again, he really does take a lot of notes, and if you're ever talking to him and he is taking notes, he'll take it and he'll apply it right away. There's not a delay in it because he takes it seriously. Now, on the other hand, if you don't see him writing it down anywhere, he really doesn't care what you're saying. Remember the time I told him be reverent and breathe? Yeah, he didn't write it in. And I was thinking about who Father Scott really reminds me of, and what I came to was he reminds me of St. Timothy, and Father John is his St. Paul. I could just imagine the discussions they've had with Father John trying to talk to Father Scott, because they're so different in many ways. But I think Father Scott, he again mentioned this today, he's learned definitely a great deal from Father John. I think he's learned a great deal from all of us, and it will only bode well in the rest of his ministry. So speaking on behalf of our parish, it's been an honor to know you. We have been very fortunate to have you here for 3 years. Our loss is going to be Sacred Heart Parish's gain. You're going to brighten up Shawano. You're going to scare Shawano. But we know they will appreciate your personality and your sense of humor and love you as much as we have. Thank you.
Well, it sure is impossible to talk about Father Scott without mentioning some of the dumb things he said over the years, isn't it? But what's interesting is he sticks with those things, just like David says, and uses them over and over again. Here are some of those phrases Father Scott uses all the time. Those of you that have been at school homilies, school masses, you'll know this one really well. He just has an uncanny way of sharing things with children. Almost every school homily includes the phrase, I probably shouldn't say this, but... Father John does this really beautiful way when the kids come up for church time. Oh, is that your little brother? Oh, you came up first. Have fun today. Father Scott, God bless you in the name of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Now get out of here! We've all heard homilies every weekend end with the phrase, that's all I got. Many things such as baptisms begin with, let's do this. But my favorite thing that Father Scott has said, he only said once. The very first Christmas Eve Mass Father Scott was here. We have this beautiful tradition in the church of blessing the nativity scene after Mass. And here at St. John's we have this special tradition of having a young child bring the infant Jesus up to the manger scene. Jesus finally made it into the manger scene. And Father Scott at that moment reminded us the true meaning of Christmas as only Father Scott could when he said, let's bless this thing. So with that, I invite our adult faith formation coordinator to come forward, Katie West Sullivan.
I'm a little shorter. So for those of you that don't know, Father Scott and I have offices across the hall from each other. Yes, you should feel sorry for me. And his office is up, if you didn't know this, in the furthest back corner of the building. Now, Father Scott would tell you that's because it was the only office available, but I think it was to keep him out of trouble. You know, he does tend to talk just a bit. Anyway, one morning Father Scott came into my office with a grin on his face. Funny that David was talking about him as Timothy, because Father Scott wanted to share with me his new favorite quote from Scripture. I was actually excited about this. He, however, could barely get through the entire passage without giggling like a little child. 1 Timothy 2:12 states, he's laughing now, I do not permit a woman to teach or to have authority over a man. She must be silent. I bet you can imagine my face after he said that. I would, however, like to point out who has the microphone now and who's laughing now. Maybe you've noticed, but Father Scott likes to have his way and will do whatever he can to manipulate situations to his advantage. Case in point, I'm standing here right now. This, not my jam, but apparently Father Scott has very few friends, and after his constant pleading and begging, I finally agreed. I guess I really just felt sorry for him. Now, as many of you also know, Father Scott is a slightly competitive person. Many of my days would be spent yelling across the hall. Sorry about that, Ruth. But I'd be yelling across the hall, reminding Father Scott that whatever the situation was, it was most likely not a competition. To which he would respond, but if it were, we know who would win. Do we though? Not so sure. Also, as a member of the staff, I wanted to share with you a few things the staff could share with you. All of them would have many stories over these last 3 years, but would like to highlight a few of them. I'm sure Lisa would love to tell you about her great frustration with all the dirty coffee mugs she would find in his office. Seriously, like 5, 6, 7 at a time, they just lined his desk. Gross. And we all would laugh greatly as we watched Karen's appalled reactions with some of the things that would come out of his mouth. And you would be surprised by the number of the zings Susan would send Father Scott's way. Really, we should have wrote some of them down. But at times, Susan would get him good, and Father Scott was struck down speechless. I know, unthinkable. Sarah would be up here telling you all about the pranks the staff would play on him. Father Scott has a special coffee mailed, and it would come to the office. Well, they swiped it, filled it with some dried beans, and put a ransom note on it. There was also all the creepy dolls that got placed in his office. Fun fact, he doesn't like creepy dolls. Or all the random old items that would show up in the office that we would strategically place around his office. And the list goes on and on. Although I do promise we do get our work done. But with some seriousness though, just as David took a moment, just wanted to say, I'm gonna miss my friend who was across the hall, who would bring so much laughter to all of the ridiculous conversations we would have, and so many others. The friend who I could speak deep theology with, and was always willing to offer a prayer or a mass when I needed it. And I may even miss just a little that awful punk rock music that could be heard every so often. But thank you so much, Father Scott, for all you have shared with so many of us, especially us on staff. We are so grateful to have known you, and our thoughts and prayers are with you as you begin your next adventure. And so, in true Father Scott form, that's all I got.
So I do have a little bit of fear that Father Scott is going to be lonely when he leaves here. He's gotten to know us all so well. But when you think about it, he grew up knowing what it meant to be lonely. Not only was he in the shadow of his better-looking brothers, but his dad was the high school principal. Think of all that time he spent in detention. Just about everyone here is on some kind of church committee, and just about every meeting, somehow or some form, it comes up that, well, where are we going to do that? Is there enough space? I think Father Scott leaving is just the answer we need. He's going to be moving out with his workout room, his extra altar, and his man cave. It's opening up all sorts of new spaces in this parish here. But most of all, Father, as we say goodbye to you, I think we're all thinking the same thing. We're really going to miss your short homilies. I mean, we're going to miss you, Father. So. With that, I'd like to introduce Father Scott Valentine.
So I'm not going to roast myself. That was my entire childhood, so it doesn't matter. Basically, most of you were already at the Mass, so I had a chance to speak to most of you already about my leaving, which is a few notes as I get ready. What are you laughing at? What? Oh, I blend in. Yeah, no, I didn't think it was anywhere near as funny as you did. Lisa did, though. But no, I just wanted to take a moment to thank all of you once again. Those of you who weren't at the Mass, as I said there, I've been told many times before that your first parish really shapes the way your priesthood looks, and I'm extremely grateful for all of you, and I hope to God that that's true, that my experiences here help to inform the way I live my priesthood. All of you have been so welcoming. Like I said, everything's welcoming here at St. John's, almost to the point that you don't want to use the word welcome anymore. Oh, but they changed chirp to be called welcome. Perfect. Doesn't sound creepy at all. But there's no, it does. It sounds really creepy. It sounds like people that don't blink, but talk to Matthew Kelly. Anyways, that's not how I saw this going either. So. But from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank all of you for the gift you've given me of accepting me, of helping me to learn, helping me to grow. You name it. I've learned so much here, and it's all because all of you have been so patient with me, so loving, so kind. There's no way I'm going to be able to thank all of the people who deserve to be thanked, so I'm not going to even pretend to be exhaustive in this list, but I do want to thank a few people. First off, Father John, one, for putting up with me living in his house. As Katie mentioned, I like to listen to punk rock music from the late 90s very loudly. Shockingly enough, Father John doesn't. But he puts up with it. But no, just, I said the same things at your 50th anniversary. I'm so grateful for you, Father John, so thank you very much. Have to give a special thank you to the roasters, especially, so obviously for David and Drew and Katie, who really, really, really didn't want to do this, but still did it because I'm pathetic. So thank you, Katie, thank you, David, thank you, Drew. The entire staff. Oh yeah, go ahead. The entire staff has been incredible. I'm not going to go by name, but just in terms of this event, obviously this wouldn't have happened without them. I have been completely removed from any of the planning process, other than telling Drew that a roast would be fine, and then forcing Katie to do it. But other than that, so I don't know who did what, but thank you to the staff for all the work you put in, and thank you for 3 amazing years and your love and devotion to this parish. You people have no idea how much work and energy and time our staff puts in to make this parish as amazing as it is. So let's get a round of applause for the staff. And then on one final note from me, today was the priesthood ordination for a diocese, so 2 guys, Father Matt Fawcett and Father Bill Evans, have just been ordained for a diocese, great guys, good friends of mine. And all I could think during the ordination, other than don't screw this up, Valentine, because I was an MC, which you know my liturgical abilities, that's a terrible idea. But all I could think throughout that was, as I'm getting ready to leave here, they're getting ready to start their assignments, I pray to God that their assignments can be half as fulfilling and half as enriching and half the gift that this has been for me. And that all goes to you guys, so thank you very much for that. I think Father John's not. He showed me a vulgar gesture. He said he doesn't want to talk. Just kidding, he's just hungry like this. So, that's all I got. Father John's going to talk.
Why don't you sit just a second? I'm not sure what I want to add to that at all. There's no way I'd even touch that. He mentioned upon how we got along together, and thanks be to God we did. But when you're somewhere around 78, and you're somewhere around, what is it now, 28? And to think we can live in the same house and not kill each other in the process. In the very beginning, I had a tough time because I grew up as an only child and I wasn't too good at trash talk. With 3 brothers, he majored in trash talk. And I can't tell you how many conversations we had like, what did you mean when you said that? I said, oh, I'm just competitive. I like to win these things. And how wonderful that was for him. So then I said one day, how am I doing? And I can't use that word. In place of that word, he said, not very good. You fail as somebody doing trash talk. I think the good thing here has been he has been mentored by a lot of people with a wonderful staff that works together so well. And you've had the advantage of working with men and women, younger people, millennials, older people, the whole range of people like that. The other thing that I noticed, you said that he likes to do things fast. very quickly he decided he wasn't going to eat too many meals with me. Because he would have to slow down tremendously. And there was no way that was going to happen. There'll be times where I say, I really got to go tell Father Scott! And he's gone. I've never seen anybody move as fast as that man does, believe me. The other thing, I guess, is just I noticed the freshness of his language. The first day here, not in your face type of freshness, that kind of thing. But when he speaks words, he never just says someone, or I beat somebody, he'll say, I crushed someone. And you can feel it in your bones, he's crushing someone. And you're just saying, don't let it be me, Lord, when he does this kind of stuff. But it's that language that has gotten open to hearts. I love to watch people when they're listening to him. In fact, I come just to listen to him. In the beginning, it was to kind of listen to what he was saying and maybe help you. But as time went on, I more and more saw, I really want to learn from that because he does it so beautifully. And he's going to touch so many hearts like that. His words go right to the heart. And I think they go to the heart because he does what every priest should do. He takes the hour of prayer. He takes his holy hour. He has other prayers well like that too. And plus exercise. Did I mention exercise? Yes. A little bit of that. But that is part of spirituality. So I want to say thank you to him for being here. It's been a wonderful 3 years. I forget the context. I think we exchanged peace one day at the altar. 50th anniversary. And he said something about, thank you for wanting me to be here. And I said, we definitely wanted you. That's the only time in my ministry that I've ever asked for another priest by name. But I knew we wanted Father Scott, and I knew the right it would be, and I still said, yes, let's have him. So God bless all of you. Thank you, Father Scott. Thank you, Echo, to the staff people, all of you people. We shape one another. Our theme is, we do it together. I learn a lot from you like I've learned a lot from him. Never thought I'd call people dude in your life, but we do a lot of that. Nice going, dude. Well, getting that down and getting better at it anyway. That's it. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you all for being here. Just a few housekeeping items as we wrap up. If you can help with tables and chairs at the end, that's awesome. Card table in the hallway. There's a quilt over there you can sign. I'm sure Father Scott will snuggle in that later this evening. So. That's all I got.